Welcome to another episode of the Dragon's Den podcast. Today's guest is Chief Dennis Reilly. I'll probably say this until I shut the podcast down, but I'm honored to have such a distinguished guest spend his time talking to me about the job. Chief Reilly has a very extensive bio, but the highlights are this. He's got over 50 years of experience, deployed combat veteran, responded to 9/11. He's been the fire chief for multiple departments. He's got a master's degree from Penn State, and he's taught all over the country, including at FDIC just this year. He's seen a lot and done a lot, and I'm so glad that he drove over from his home in Navarre to hang out at the pool, eat some crawfish etouffee, and talk about the job. I hope you enjoy.
Got it. All right. So are we ready to roll?
Oh, we're ready, man.
Ready to roll. All right. Welcome to another episode of the Dragon's Den podcast. Today we have on, so happy to have him on. Very excited to have him on. We've got Chief Dennis Reilly. So Chief Reilly, quick bio. He's got a very long bio, but just real quick rundown. 50 years in the fire service.
50 years? Yep.
50 years bachelor's. He's also got his master's in
Public administration from Penn State.
From Penn State. I'm a Notre Dame fan, so I won't hold that against you, Chief.
Well, I'm a Notre Dame fan too, so I have some split loyalties here.
Split loyalty. So
yep.
He's been with several fire departments. He's been the chief at a couple of fire departments. Taught all around the country, including now FDIC, which I hope that we do get to talk about at some point. Military veteran. Also served in private contracting for a little while. Yep. And also helped with also assisted with some of the work down at 9/11. So he's been a lot of places, done a lot of things, a wealth of experience. So, Chief, we're gonna probably do this remotely. So, and then I called you and I said, hey, we go down to Pensacola every single year, just about, sometimes multiple times a year. I said, man, what if you did this? What if we did this like face to face? And you said, sure, come on down. And it just so happened that I didn't realize the house was so nice. And I said, well, instead of bothering you with all the construction that y'all are currently going on, I said, what if we just do it on our side?
Yeah.
He said, sure, we'll come on down. And I'm so glad we were able to get face to face. So, Chief, we very much appreciate you coming on. When I look at the guests that, when you kind of start in Louisiana, you start to stretch out. I didn't think that I would ever get an opportunity to speak to you. It's a little bit surreal. I'm going to be honest with you, but I'm so glad to have you here and talking. So I'll let you get through kind of your journey through the fire service. You've been on about 1,000 podcasts and you've said this story 1,000 times, but my audience probably isn't the same as that audience. So introduce us to Chief Reilly a little better.
Well, first off, thank you for having me on. I mean, it's always a privilege when I get a chance to, tell my story and talk about the things that I think that are so important. It's a humbling experience for me that, a podcast host would say, listen, you probably have things to say that my audience wants to hear. So I am very thankful and appreciative of that. So thanks a lot. I'm looking forward to it. And yeah, man, I've 51st year. I started my 51st year this year. Started when I was 16 as a junior volunteer in Patchogue, New York, which is out on Long Island, about 60 miles east of the city. Went in the Army when I was 17. Volunteered in several fire departments while I was at Fort Bragg. Got out of the Army and went right to work. I did a couple of years in EMS. Went to Durham, North Carolina when they split up the public safety department. I was in the first class of firemen that they had hired in like 30 years because they had been public safety. From there, I made my way up to Cherry Hill, New Jersey, spent 19 years there. Had a fantastic time. Started out as a training officer in one of the 6 fire districts we had within the township. During my time there, we consolidated all 6 of those departments into one department. I was the first battalion chief ever promoted from a competitive exam. Spent about 10 years as a shift commander. Had a great time. Had an absolutely great time. Some really fantastic experiences. Worked with some really great people. Worked in a busy urban setting. Really exposed to a lot of things. We did work on the New Jersey Turnpike. We had a high-speed rail line that ran through our city. I was involved in tech rescue. I was involved in hazmat. During that time, I'm one of the plank holders for New Jersey Task Force #1.
Yeah,
So-
one of the founding members, right?
One of the plank holders. We had we put in 2 classes within the first year to start up the team, and I was in the second class. So I was there from day one, just about. I
Sure.
went to 9/11, spent 12 days at Ground Zero, did a couple other USAR deployments, had some flooding. We did a flooding job in Bound Brook, New Jersey, where the entire city got flooded. So we went in, did a lot of search and some property recovery work. I had a couple building collapses. Went to a 6-story parking deck in Atlantic City that pancaked
it. Yeah.
into the basement. So that we were there for about 3 days trying to make a recovery on a couple of the workers that were killed. A lot of experiences.
Yeah.
Started traveling around. Retired out in New Jersey. Went overseas for a couple of years doing some private security work for the Diplomatic Security Service. I was in Iraq and Afghanistan from 07 to the end of 10. Came back, went to Sunrise Beach, Missouri for close to 8 years. Had a great time there, small organization. They brought me in to make some changes. We made some changes. We did some really, really solid work. And I left. And that organization, I follow them on Facebook now. If any of the Sunrise Beach folks are listening, man, you guys doing a great job, man. They have just taken off. It's really something to be proud of. Those folks are doing some great work.
Excellent.
Went out to California for a couple of years. From California, went to Kansas. And, when you're a fire chief, you move in a circle with fire chiefs. And I've had a bunch of fire chiefs say, hey, man, you're going to wake up one day and you're just going to say, hey, man, this is the day. This is the day. It's over with. You've reached the zenith. You've done all you can. And I just kind of blew that off. I go, nah, I got these plans, man. We had already bought a house down here in Florida, and we can get into that.
Sure.
That's
Yeah.
a funny story that we'll get into.
Sure.
So I already had the house. It's October. We're getting ready for another winter in Kansas. It's like, man, I'm right at Medicare eligibility. It's like, nah, this is the day.
You found it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I woke up and I said, this is the day. I called the city manager. We had some, real good conversations. He supported me. And two weeks later, man, I was living down here on the panhandle of Florida, man, just loving life.
Loving life. So yeah, when I've met you, I say I met you. I did not meet you in February of 2022, but the way that I came across you was, the CFT conference.
Yep.
I remember the kind of funny story I told you when we had supper last year, that I texted Molly. I was seeing all these all these instructors come in. I was like, wow, this guy was a good. And then I saw Chief of Pittsburgh. And I was like, man, they got the Chief of Pittsburgh over here. And I was telling Molly, like, that's pretty big deal. And then you had come out to do your class, and it was the Pittsburgh, Kansas. And I was like, huh. And then you came in, you're like 2-station department. And I was like, okay, well, let's hear what he's got to say. And I was blown away. I was like, he's saying such good stuff.
Well, thank you.
And that was when I was, hey, let's follow him on social media and see what's kind of going on. And then it was shortly after, I say shortly after, it was a reasonable time after you had decided to retire, move down to Florida. Me and Molly have been talking about moving to Florida after I retire forever. It's like, that is that's the goal. 7.9 years. We can, I tell her when we went into this neighborhood, I was like, find you a house.
Yeah.
Because this is going to be hope. The AI picked up. I said, pick out a house because this is where we're going to end up. So I saw your journey and I was like, oh, I think that's kind of the ticket to get down south. I also want to say, Chief, that just to let other people know that you were the second person that I reached out to on the fire department, outside of my fire department, because when I was building my expectations, which I hope we're going to get into, when I built them for my crew, you were the first and only person that I sent them to kind of look over them and say, Chief, what do you think about this? Because you had expectation talk within your class. So anyway, that was our run-ins, and I was like, man, when we started the podcast, I was like, man, one day I hope I get to talk to Chief Reilly. So I'm gonna call you out publicly. Most people give me notes.
Okay.
Chief Reilly, as a veteran, did not give me notes. So
No, I didn't.
This is gonna be. We got a couple of little talking topics, but This is going to be Chief Reilly's show. I know all the general stuff that he talks about. So now that we've kind of got your background, Chief, how we kind of sort of know each other, I'm gonna give you the floor to go where you want to go with it.
So I think the spontaneous thing is pretty cool because it just, when it's spontaneous, you end up bringing up things that it's like, oh, wow, yeah. So I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
We're going to have a good time.
Sure.
The Florida story, I got to tell you the Florida story.
Definitely.
So I grew up on the water out in New York. I grew up on Long Island, right on the Great South Bay, man. I've always liked the beach. I've always been a beach guy. So, and hats off to Chief Isaacson. He got me involved with, county fire tactics. And it was kind of close to my retirement. It was coming up, but I hadn't really decided I'm going to pull the trigger. So I'm down here and I start talking to him and I say, hey, listen, I really want to come to Florida. I want to be close to the beach. What's the Atlantic coast like? Because that's where I figured I was going to end up, somewhere on the Space Coast or whatever.
Sure.
And Chief Isaacson looked at me, he goes, why don't you just come here to the Panhandle where you know people? And it was like a light bulb moment. I go, well, yeah, that makes perfect sense. So I knew Shannon Stone and I knew DJ. So we all went to breakfast one morning. I spoke at COBC and we'd stayed a couple days over. And I actually brought my wife with me. So I'm driving her around. She sees the beach and she goes, man, this is gorgeous. This is it. So we're at breakfast and I'm talking to Shannon Stone and he goes, I tell him, we're really serious about, maybe coming here. And he goes, well, I'll just give you the name of a real estate agent I've been dealing with for the last 20 years. Sure. So I called her up and we started looking at houses that week that we were here. And we actually put a bid in and we didn't get the house. So we go back to Kansas. My wife flies out to California to see our daughter. She was out in the Bay. So she's looking on the internet and she sends me this link to a house. And I'm looking at it, I go, man, this place really looks good. But,
you never know.
You know the way they do it.
Yeah.
So
they're only going to show you all the good,
none
of the bad.
Well, they use the wide angle lenses.
Makes everything look bigger.
Like, oh, my God. So I send the link to Shannon Stone and I said, hey, listen, where is this place? And he looks at it and goes, it's like right around the corner from where I live. He goes, I'll go over and take a look at it. So him and DJ go over and they take a look at the house. They get, they climb over the fence, they look at it and they call me up and they say, hey man, this place was gorgeous from the outside. So the real estate agent goes in and she FaceTimes with us back in Kansas walking around. And it's like, she goes, this house is underpriced. Mm-hmm. And it was within the market, it was within the range we were looking for. So we put an offer in, we bought the house sight unseen. We had never set foot in it. We bought the house, I think we settled toward the end of July. And the first day we ever set foot in the house was in September when we brought a load of stuff down from Kansas.
Sight unseen on a house is I'm not gonna say it's crazy, but that's you gotta trust the people that you.
It is totally unlike my wife and I. I mean, we're planners. We execute. We're kind of meticulous. I mean, I got that from being in the Army and doing that close protection work over in Iraq and Afghanistan. You become a planner, man. You plan for everything, and it's like, okay. So I had some good friends and people I trusted tell me it looked really good, and we rolled the dice. And you know what? It's been the best move.
Yeah,
it really has.
We've only ever. I'm so attracted. We're gonna end up not talking about fire stuff. We'll talk about the life history. Only ever we volunteer. We vacation as a South Louisiana kid. Every single year was to the Panhandle. That's just where we went. Destin, Fort Walton, sometimes Navarre, Panama City. Sometimes Pensacola. And so this place, I just fell in love with it. So I think once you come down here, it starts to intoxicate you a little bit. And that's probably what Ann was thinking, like, oh, we got to get over there.
So she was a real big mountain person. She spent a lot of time, her dad was in the service, traveled a lot. So she spent a lot of time back in the mountains of North Carolina. When he was overseas and whatever, they would go back to where the grandmother was and everything. She's always been a mountain person. So I brought her down here and, she liked the beach because I like the beach. And she's like, she spends a lot of time there because that's where I do. So we had a rental car. So we pulled out the Hilton and we made a right-hand turn and we drove down to the National Seashore and the deal was done.
It was over.
I didn't even have to get all the way to Navarre Beach. We got about 3/4 of the way down. I pulled into one of those little parking areas. We got out. We sat on the beach for 20 minutes, and she looked at me. She goes, "You think we could afford a house here?" I go, "Let's look into it.
Let's figure it out."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yep.
Awesome story.
So that's my journey.
Yeah. Yeah. No doubt. So you teach several classes. You've got 1,000 podcasts. You talked about a lot of stuff. Where do you want to jump into? Where do you want to jump into?
Well, let's jump into the thing that you and I really kind of, built our relationship over, and that's expectations.
Excellent.
And I talk about expectations in several of my podcasts because expectations, I think, are the foundation of everything. There's a real easy way to look at it. If you're leading people, how can they be successful if they don't know what you expect from them? It's nothing more than that. It's not a very complicated thing. It's not something that you really have to, I think you have to spend a lot of time to create good expectations. But, the concept is like, why isn't every supervisor not doing expectations with their subordinates? And I just don't see how you do it.
One of the things, Chief, that I've noticed is that firemen, especially young firemen, they want to I don't say do the right thing. They want to make the boss happy.
Yeah.
And I've heard so many times, where expectations are not given, and then the boss is constantly going, "Well, why didn't you do that thing?" And they're like, "Well, I didn't know that you wanted, like, you were super particular about that thing, or I didn't know, why didn't you lock up the stay?" Or whatever the issues are.
Yeah.
And then every day it's a consistent, like, this little thing or that little, whatever the case may be. And those guys those firemen who are trying to do a good job end up getting a bad rap from the boss. Like, this dude's lazy because he didn't do the thing that I asked him to do. It's like, well, did you ever put it down on paper or at least sit him down and
Just
say,
sit down and talk to him.
Now, if you lay all these things out, it's all understood as, here are the things that I'm looking for. And now then you can figure out, okay, that I need this thing done, or that I'm expecting this. And so for me, it would solve a whole lot of problems. If you've got pet peeves as a boss, that's fine. Just write them down. Just tell me what the pet peeves are. We can fix them. So anyway.
And you just set me up for the next topic in what you just said. I'm going to come back to it.
Sure.
But, the way I look at expectations, and what I told everybody who ever worked for me is, my job was to put you in the position to be successful. That's why I'm here. Now, what you choose to do with it, that's on you. But if I'm not setting clear expectations for you, how can you be successful? You're just kind of stumbling around in the dark, hoping that you do the right thing.
Yeah.
And they don't. I tell people, I tell new supervisors, hey, think about this. When you get somebody new to your command, as soon as they come through the door, ask them 2 questions. Have you ever played team competitive sports, or have you ever been in the military? And if they say no to both of those questions, what they're telling you is they have no understanding of the environment that they're going to work in. They don't. Doesn't mean that they're bad people, doesn't mean that they're stupid, doesn't mean that they're lazy, doesn't mean anything other than the fact that they don't really understand the high-performing team environment. So if we don't take time to talk to them about that environment and set some expectations for them, what do we think is going to happen? I think that we've probably lost some people in the fire service that could have been tremendous assets. And the reason why we lost them is the bosses didn't take time to set clear expectations for them, didn't take time to say, listen, my job is to make you successful. They just didn't invest in that time. They assume that as soon as they walk through the door, they know what they need to do, and that's all there is to it. And it just doesn't work like that.
It goes back to a little bit, and it's a whole separate topic, but I think it's definitely related to the guys like me I was a city kid that never ran a chainsaw. Didn't need to know how to run a chainsaw, right? And then you go out into the world. Thankfully, I had a volunteer department that really kind of cleaned up some of the rough edges. But let's say I didn't, and then you go out there and then you run into a boss that has these kids that don't even know how to run a chainsaw. Well, if you've never been exposed to the thing, so it goes to that same thing. Let them know, and then you're setting them up for success. Yeah. And like you said, how many guys had bad experience with the fire service because they weren't set up, and then they're like, well, this isn't for me because of this bad interaction. And then boom, they're gone. Lose a good one.
I can go somewhere and make more money, and I don't have to put up with this. It cracks me up, man. I hear people, I hear this all the time. Well, those young kids this and those this and blah, 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 and the new generation, they have no mechanical knowledge. It's the plus and minus screwdriver. And this is a bunch of, well, think about this. You can grow up in New York City and never have a driver's license. Never have a driver's license. The only time you get a driver's license is when you apply for the fire department test, because you have to have a driver's license. But you can grow up in New York City and take public transit to school. You never physically drive a car. And the New York City Fire Department, within 7 to 10 years, takes these people and they end up driving aerial apparatus in Manhattan.
Yeah.
If I grew up in New York City, do you think that I have a chainsaw in the closet of, my apartment on the 17th floor of a housing project? No way.
Zero chance.
But these are some of the people that department hires, and they just realize that, and they spend some time, and they teach them, and they train them, and those people become very successful. Now, of course, there's a lot of people that come to the FDNY with a lot of experience from the volunteer service, from the suburbs and whatever. Yeah, of course. But there's people that come to the FDNY, they've lived in the city all their life. They grew up in apartment buildings.
Yeah.
And I think what's so special about the FDNY, and they're not perfect. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm not saying that they're perfect, but what the FDNY has come to realize is that the success of the mission is a byproduct of the people we take to the fire. And if we're going to succeed in the mission, then we've got to invest in the people we take to the fire. And some of those people never had a driver's license until they took the fire department test. And here's the other thing about those people. They get a license to take the test, but they're still not driving cars, because they're still living in the city and they're still using public transportation.
Yeah.
But when they get ready, the city, the FDNY, invest in the individual to develop the skills those people have to be able to prosecute the mission.
Right.
And it's not about the person and that dumb kid or that millennial or that. No, this is the person who's in the seat. These are the people we're going to take to the fight. So let's make sure they're ready to be successful.
But I want you, we were going to hop on to we were setting up for the next topic, but I want to pause you. I want to hold that in your thought, in your mind. The
volunteer, I've got it. It's waiting.
It's waiting. Hold it there. You started out volunteer service. Me going from volunteer to paid was huge. Volunteer service, I'm not going to go down my path, but it was critical to me getting into the paid job and falling in love with the job. I'm wondering I've never heard you speak on this. What do you think about, and maybe you have, your volunteer service? Did that open up the door for you? Not just open up the door, but is that where you fell in love with it?
Yeah.
Just a small curiosity.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's like I started hanging out in firehouses, and they were volunteer firehouses. And I go, man, this is some really, really neat stuff. I mean, I always wanted to be a fireman. And
even from before that.
Oh,
even from earlier.
Okay. Always. I mean, as a little kid, man, I just, I told this story on a podcast one time. The reason why I initially went into service was so that I could get the veterans points on the FDNY test.
Oh,
that's why I went in the Army.
You were shooting for the FDNY.
That's why I went in the Army. So when I was getting ready to get out of the Army, they weren't giving a test. And it's like, well, I've had a taste of freedom. I really don't want to move home with mom and dad. So I'll just re-enlist in the Army. I re-enlisted in the Army, got ready to get out again. I was working part-time at county EMS, getting ready to get out of the Army. They still weren't giving the test in the FDNY. So the director of emergency services said, listen, man, I got an open position, man. You're going to get out of the Army in 3 weeks. If you want a full-time job, we got one for you.
Okay.
And that's, and at that point, and then very shortly thereafter, I met Ann.
Mm-hmm.
And, we were living in North Carolina, and it's like, I guess the New York City thing isn't going to work out. I'm just going to make, the best life I can right here. And that's what I ended up doing. Yeah. But the volunteer service truly put me, I always had the desire, and then I started hanging out in firehouses, and I said, wow, this is really what I thought it was. This is really where I want to be.
Correct.
So
beautiful. Yeah. All right. Yeah. I just had to ask that real quick, cause I'd never heard you talk about your volunteer service, time. All right. You want to grab the follow-up to expectations?
Yeah, sure. So, when you made those comments about, we don't set expectations. So the boss is always, they're lazy, they're stupid, they're whatever. And I talk about this a lot. Listen, I'm not a psychiatrist or a psychologist. I'm not a social worker, but I've done a lot of research, and I've talked to a lot of very, very intelligent people about how the human mind operates. And there's basically there's three different planes that the human mind operates in: the self-image, the conscious, and the subconscious mind. They all interact with each other. So when I'm when I'm your boss, and I'm saying you're lazy, you're stupid, you don't know how to do this, blah, 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 isn't that going to impact your self-image?
Of course it will.
Absolutely. So, and your self-image impacts the way you're able to perform on the fire ground. So we're beating them down in the firehouse, okay? And there's issues with their self-image. And then we go to a fire, and that really, rears its ugly head, impacts their performance on the fire ground. So now we beat them for that. And before you know it, we fall into the self-fulfilling prophecy where the people say to themselves, man, I'm never going to get this right. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not competent, and then they really start to get reserved. They really start to stand back. They really start to fall back some, and they end up the ones out in the front yard that, always have the air pack malfunction. Some of those people don't deserve to be in the service. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm not painting that, with a broad brush. Some of those people don't belong in the service, and they should be shown another career path because they're not fit for this. But I don't think we can automatically assume that everybody who exhibits those behaviors are not fit for the service. Some people who exhibit those behaviors because of the environment and the work group that they're in. And we have to take responsibility for what we're doing in that work group. And if I'm the boss, I got to take responsibility for that. If I'm the boss, no matter what I think, I have an obligation. I have an obligation to the community. I have an obligation to my organization, and I have an obligation to the people who have been given to me to prosecute the mission, to do the very best that I possibly can. And that means I got to, no matter what I think, I got to bite my tongue sometimes. I've got to go the extra mile to help people develop the skill set they need to have. And then over the course of time, if they prove that they're not going to grasp this, then we have to have the difficult conversation and make the difficult decisions. But we can't start there.
Right. That leads me, or I'm going to lead you into it, into training. What do we got to train our guys. And that was something that was, whenever I went to CFT, I talked about this on the scrap, which was they opened up, all of you guys were doing different stuff. You were doing leadership. Once again, you had Kyle Romigas doing engine work, and you had Baz doing RIT, and you had all these different things going on, but all of your messaging in my opinion, you're all saying the exact same thing, which was train, train, train. Go all of this stuff, no matter what we're teaching, the answer to me all came back to training. And it was eye-opening to me to hear some of the not workloads, but the effort that not only was being put in, but needed to be put in. Like guys saying, hey, we stretch a line every single day. Now, we don't stretch a line every single day at my company, but we throw ladders every morning. So to hear other guys say, hey, we throw ladders every morning, it's like, at the time I was like, well, that's a thing? Like, man, you can do that? Like it opened up my eyes to even the possibilities of what could and what should be done. So now we train every day. So I know that's something, training in general is something that you speak to quite a bit. So I want to give you the floor on training and building your team, building your guys up.
And we're going to go back
certainly
to what we just talked about in the conscious, subconscious, and self-image.
Okay.
You can only do one thing at a time in the conscious mind. You cannot multitask in the conscious mind. And that's not Dennis. That's a lot of smart scientists, psychiatrists, sociologists. They figured this out.
Sure.
What you can do is through sets and reps, you can transfer the performance of a task into the subconscious mind. Once I make it, I use the air pack as an example. If I've done enough sets and reps, quality sets and reps, once I decide to put my air pack on, I don't have to think about the steps. I just have my air pack on because I've hardwired the neural pathways for that task to become instinctive and reflexive.
I want to pause you there real quick. Rob Ramirez, when he did his RIT class, he had a guy put on an air pack, and he goes, just put on the air pack. And then the guy looked down, and he goes, all right, everybody stop. He goes, what did he do wrong? And they were like, nothing. He's just putting an air pack on. He goes, he looked down. He said, I would encourage you guys to stop looking down when you look at the air pack, so that when you need to do it, when you need to either take it off, doff it, don it back, that it's reflexive and you're feeling it and you know it without using your eyesight. So when you talked about the air pack, I just listened to him at Lyft, so I was like, let me tie that together. All right.
And he's one of my buddies. Yeah. He's a good friend of mine, and we talk about this stuff all the time, man. We nerd out on it.
Yeah.
So when you perform that task multiple times, you transfer the performance of the task into the subconscious mind. Now you open up the bandwidth in the conscious mind. So as I'm walking up, I'm reading smoke, I'm looking at windows, I'm sizing things up, and I'm not having, I don't have to do that. But that's training. One thing that we don't do a really good job of is explaining to the new people why we want you to put your air pack on 1,000 times, because that's where you hardwire those neural pathways for the task to become instinctive and reflexive. That's why we want you to. This isn't, the big suck fist with the drill sergeant getting to see you, do a thing 100 times and just yell at you. No, there's a real reason behind it. We need to take these tasks and move them into the subconscious mind. So that's one thing about training. And, the shortcoming I see a lot is we just don't take time to explain this to people. If I explain this to you and you understand the importance of it, are you more willing to do this mundane task over and over and over and over again? If you understand the why behind it. And I go back to the old guys. They want to know, these young kids, they want to know the why. Well, yeah. You know what? Tell them why. Okay? A lot of people, and I can really take a shot at some of the old crusty guys because I'm 67 years old. So if there's anybody who's old and grumpy, it's me. One of the reasons why the old guys bitch about that is they don't understand the why. All they know is, I pull this lever and I turn this knob. They don't know why they're doing it. They just know the actions. They can't explain the why. So if you're a senior person and you're going to mentor young people, you're going to mentor new members, you're going to train new members, make sure you understand the why. Because when you explain the why, the light bulb comes on and people are willing to engage.
Yeah, when I teach search, we always start with the why.
Yeah.
Why are we searching? What is the purpose of the thing that we're doing? It's not just, hey, let's go do the walk the wall method. Let's go do the tripod. Let's teach you how to VES.
Yeah.
Why are we doing these things? What is the purpose of a VES? Why does this make sense? Why are we going to close the door instead of just do this like a robot? Do this. Once you explain the why, it opens the mind up. And like you said, they're more willing to participate in the thing that you're asking them to do.
The other thing that, we all need to think about is when we really engage with them and we explain the why, maybe they will come up with something new that we didn't think about. Well, the people who are really out there, pushing us forward, pushing us toward excellence, are the people who understand the why. And because they understand the why, they can kind of take a step back and say, you know what? This may work out a little bit better. And when we don't explain the why, are we robbing from the profession? Because that one person 5 years down the road, he understands the why, he develops the skills, he or she gets a lot of experience. Now all of a sudden they go, wait a minute. There is a better way.
Correct.
And because we haven't done that, we rob everybody from that. So I think that's important.
Yeah, Chief Pruitt out of
Texas.
Texas. Yeah, I just interviewed him recently, and he talked about cadres, and he talked about specifically the nozzle forward cadre, and how you got to be careful with some instructors because sometimes they're just surface level. If you scratch below the surface, everything kind of starts to fall apart, and it's the guys that really don't understand the why behind it.
Yeah.
And this goes into, I'm going to go too far down the rabbit hole. I'm going to try not to. I had a biology professor one time. She was a doctor of biology, and she was probably in her 60s at the time when I was in college. And Dr. Alciator at UL, and she understood so much stuff. And where I really knew that she knew her shit, at first I was like, she's just repeating. She's been doing this class for years. She's just kind of regurgitating the stuff.
Reading off of the script.
And she would draw on the board every day, but I was like, she's drawn that picture 1,000 times. What really hurt my light bulb moment for like, oh, she really knows, was a student had asked her, hey, doc, why is it that when this human body thing happens, that they give this drug for this thing? And she goes, well, it's usually because when they have this body thing, it's affecting it in this route. They need this drug to counteract this other drug. And I was like, oh, you scratched the surface? She was fine. She was fine going much deeper.
Oh, yeah.
And that goes to some of what you're saying with the guys that are really, really on their game as far as instructors, is that instead of just regurgitating, if you were to stop them and say, why is that thing? That they can kind of rabbit hole and go, well, it's because of this. Or what if you have this scenario? Well, we might have to switch to this thing. It's what he said it, the depth of knowledge.
Yes.
And the guys that understand the why have that depth of knowledge. Very important.
Yeah. And, part of that is, the growth into that, starting at the beginning, really nailing the basics. I got to go back to the basics because the basics, are everything. We explain to people why it's so important. We had a thing in Kansas we called the daily stretch. So when you came out of Recruit Academy, you got a log sheet, and every day you had to pull hose, and your officer had to sign off on it. You did that for a year. We had hose bed simulators in every firehouse. When they came to do their quarterly evaluations, we made them bring their pledge book. We checked the daily stretch, make sure they're doing it. Any problems? Hey, Cap, why? Held the officers accountable. But they were pulling hose every day.
Yeah.
And at the end of the year, they got real, real good at it. They knew how to do it, and they started to really understand. They got to the point where they could be like Kyle Romigas says, independent operators. They could look at the situation, make a decision on their own. They did not need the officer to tell them everything because they had done this so much. And it goes back to what I talked about. They had done it so much that the act of pulling hose now resides in the subconscious mind. they can use the conscious mind. They have the full bandwidth where they can start thinking about, okay, this is the route that I'm going to take. Hey, listen, I got multiple stairways. I got common balcony apartments, multiple stairways. Fire's over here. I need to go up these stairs because it's going to take me 3 minutes to get up there. And in 3 minutes, if I go up this set of stairs, I'm going to be behind the fire.
Right.
But they could make all these decisions because they didn't have to think about the actual act of pulling hose, because they pulled hose. And they pulled hose under the supervision of their officers. So now they're doing the task, they're hardwiring the neural pathways, and we're giving them directed practice like Karn talks about in his book, Going Pro. If you just send them out there to pull hose, there's no guarantee. But when we put them out there with somebody, I tell this story all the time. One of the worst things I ever did was I tried to teach myself how to play golf. Right. So I go to range and I got a bucket of balls, and man, it's like, so typical fireman mentality. And I steal this from Rob Ramirez. Plan A doesn't work. What you do plan A harder. So instead of getting a small bucket of balls, now I get a big bucket of balls. And at the very last ball, everything's going, because I'm just out there. It's not
practicing wrong.
It's what Carnes calls naive practice. And I'm naive to think that I can go out there and replicate the same thing over and over and over again and get better. I can't. What ends up happening is, for Father's Day, my wife buys me lessons with a pro. I start working with a golf pro, and we spend several lessons undoing the bad habits that I created through naive practice to get to the point where now I can start working on an effective swing. And this is all training, man. This is all stuff that's really connected to each other. We started a half an hour ago talking about neural pathways, and now we're still talking about things that really interact with each other.
We can bounce back and forth through topics, but I think that leads to something that I think is super important for you, and it also leads into that same conversation of opening up bandwidth.
Yeah,
and that goes back to fitness. And one of the things that I've always loved about you, Chief, is that you have been out of the game, and the fact that you haven't really at a firefighter level of having to put on gear and enter structures and fight fire. That has not been a thing for you for a good chunk of time, but what we still see you doing is I still see you on social media doing your workouts, whether it be up downs or, over the head plate holds or, it's maintaining your physical fitness. And it's you preach it, and you don't have to do it because you're 67, you're out of the game. You don't have to do it, but you still do it. But it goes to something that I had brought you had talked about it on one of your pool sessions where you talked about the book on combat.
Yeah.
And you said, man, somebody had it disappeared, but the heart rate issues, that's kind of what I wanted you to dive into.
Yeah. Well,
fitness, heart rate, stress.
And once again, thank you for replacing the copy of On Combat that somebody has got, man. He bought me a copy of On Combat, and he brought it to me. Yeah. So thank you.
Not a big deal.
But so here, the number one thing, and I use this line all the time, and some people are just going to roll their eyes, and I don't really give a damn if they do.
Sure.
It's called firefighting. It's not fire dancing. It's not fire watching. It's fire fighting. So if you're out of shape, you're gonna lose the fight, bro. I'm telling you that simple. If you're out of shape, I mean, if you don't have strength, you don't have endurance or whatever, come to the gym with me, man. We'll roll a little bit on the mat, and you can be 30 years younger than I am, and I'm gonna wear your ass out. It's firefighting. You have got to be in physical condition to perform at a high level in a high stress, high threat environment. And that's the bottom line for me. I have always taken an oath in every position I've ever had. I've placed my hand on the Bible. My family's been there watching me swear to God that I'm going to do this job to the best of my ability. So help me God. Well, if I'm not physically fit, how can I do this job? It's just simple. You don't have to like it. You just got to do it. And you know what? You don't have to spend 5 hours a day in the gym. You don't have to be a marathon runner. You don't have to be, a world-class power lifter. You just got to be in decent shape. Do stuff every day and play the long game, because if you do stuff every day over the course of time, you're going to develop a high level of fitness. But if you're not physically fit, it impacts everything else. You can do all the training you want in the sterile environment, but when you get that hormonal dump in a high threat environment, you are not going to stop the physiological changes in your body when you're in a high stress environment. You're not going to do it. Now, if your resting pulse rate is 100, you got a lot shorter walk to get to 160 than I do. Okay. I have an Oura ring, I have a Garmin watch. I look at my metrics all the time. Man, when I sleep, my pulse rate goes down into the 40s. My resting pulse rate is in the high 50s most days. Mm-hmm. So even when I get that hormonal dump, it's still a long walk to get up to 150. Those physiological things are still happening to me. Okay. And I'm just, it just seems common sense. If my resting pulse rate's lower, it takes me a longer time to get there. And because I'm physically fit, I'm more likely to be able to negate the negative consequences of that hormonal dump.
So I want you to, and I'm not asking you to quote exactly on combat, or the
I know
the
those
reg
numbers.
Well, if you wanted to kind of get to that, because what's going to happen is, based on exactly what you just said, things start to shut down with the human body,
sure,
both mentally and physically, as you start to hit these higher numbers. And to your point, if you can keep your heart rate lower for longer, then you're not going to start to run into these orange and red zones where things start to get your decision making starts to get wonky, which I'll let you get into. And I just want to bring this up real quick. I ran into a guy. What is his last name? I cannot. His first name is Marcio, but he's a firefighter out of Panama City, and we went to NFA.
Yeah, I
not Panama City. He's in the Florida Keys. Florida Keys. We went to National Fire Academy, and we were working out. And he is an elite cyclist, and we'd go for a little run, light, and I look at my heart rate, and I said, Marcio, what's your heart? I'm just curious, because I'm talking like elite.
Yeah. And
I think mine was at like 130. I was probably in the low 130s, nice slow pace, probably like an 11-minute pace. And he said like 101. He was 25, 30 beats below mine, and we were putting out the same work capacity.
Yep.
Work capacity is the same, yet my reserve was nowhere near his reserve. So anyway, that'll go into the on combat, which I'll let you do.
So what Grossman says, when you start getting up about 120, things start to happen. When you get up about 160, 170, you're really at the point where you're getting ready to drop off of the cliff.
Sure. Okay? I believe that.
Now, what Grossman says, though, is there's a concept called what he calls the gray man, gray woman. And these are people that can operate very, very effectively at that high pulse rate, okay, at that 160 level, because the hormonal dump still happens to them. Okay? It still happens, but their performance does not drop off of the cliff. And he attributes that to basically three things. Number one, they have a high level of physical fitness. They have a solid base of skills, and they have a very high level of confidence in their ability to perform, okay? Because they are physically fit, because they do train, because they have neural pathways that are hardwired, and they engage in strenuous training, tasking training, stressful training. They're not afraid to put themselves into difficult situations in training. these people also, everybody talks about you have to be comfortable in uncomfortable situations. And I think that's very true. But I think the converse or the reverse of that statement is also true. I get very uncomfortable if I'm comfortable for too long.
Oh,
That's a red flag to me.
I feel that.
Okay.
Yep.
Now, that's not to say, I mean, like Sunday, all right, man, Sundays, man, I'm not hitting on anything. I'm sleeping late. My wife makes me a nice egg McMuffin every Sunday. Man, I house a sleeve of cookies. I sit there. I watch golf, man. I snooze. I take a nap in my recliner. That's okay.
Right.
But if I was to do that like 4 days in a row, I'd really start to feel, feel antsy. It's like, no, man, I can't do this, man. So all these things make the gray person. But the gray person, at some point in time, I don't care if you're working in Two Potato, Idaho, you go to 40 runs a year with a 1973 Ford cab over. I don't care. The run is coming. One of these days, the run is going to come. And it may be a grass fire with somebody trapped in a combine. It may be a mobile home with 3 kids in the back bedroom. You don't have to be a Squad 72 in Philadelphia to catch that run. If you stay in the fire service long enough, you're going to catch that run. And who do you want to go to the run with? You want to go to the run with this person who is out of shape. They don't engage in training. They never push themselves. They get up 160, 170 pulse rate. They fall off of the cliff and they end up fight, flight, or freeze, sucking their thumb. Or do you want to go with that person who is capable of managing, their physiological response to a high stress environment and still be able to function? Because the run's going to come.
So 2 things, John Spiro talks about asset, and a lot of people, this is very common, asset or liability.
Yeah.
Asset or liability. What do you want to be? And what you just described was an asset, and you also just, you also described a liability.
And it's your choice. It's 100%. Let's not walk away from this until we say it. It is absolutely 100% your choice if you're going to be an asset or a liability. You cannot put that on anyone else. You can, there's reasons and excuses. It's all an excuse. Oh, it's the fire department. They don't provide me the training. We don't have the facilities. We don't make a lot of runs. We don't have, the right equipment. I'm in a lousy company, a shitty firehouse. I don't like my boss. My wife is ugly. The dog bit me. You can make all the excuses in the world.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, if you're an asset or a liability, is totally your decision.
Yeah, excellent. So I wanted to talk about two other things when he thought about the run is coming. I've heard the Stone Brothers. I don't know which one it was. I want to say it was Shannon that said, and I'll ask him if I've heard him say, every day that you don't have a rescue, you're one day closer to having a rescue.
Yeah.
And it's just the clock. It's a little bit like death. It's like it's coming for us all. And that's how you got to view the fire service, whether you're in, I've never heard that, Two Potato, Idaho. I like that. It doesn't really make a difference. And I have witnessed this, and I'm sure you've also witnessed this. We have guys in small rural town, Louisiana, that have had trapped victims confirmed, and you got 2 guys showing up. One's got to put water on the fire. The other one's got to make the search. And I interviewed that dude on a podcast, the one that had to do the search by himself. And it wasn't in his big paid department. It was out in the middle of nowhere with a population of nothing, and it happened. He had to do it. So that's to that point. The other thing I want to talk about when it comes to physical fitness, and this is just me talking, is that a lot of people want to hit certain levels, like a certain level of fitness. Like, well, once you do this, it's good enough. And like, my argument has always been, there are tons of dudes on my fire department around the fire service that are way, way stronger, way better cardio. But the goal is not like a number. The goal is, are you improving your work capacity on a daily basis to whatever that is? If it's going to be for you strength, then let it be strength. If it's going to be cardio, let it be cardio. But people have this weird view. The guys that don't work out, like, oh, I could do the job when I have to, I'll do. It's like, okay, even if you could, would you not want to get a little better if you've got a like we all have a physical limit.
Yeah.
There's a certain level of human, there's a certain weight that I can no longer pull out. Right. So even if I can pull out the 120-pound person, okay, but what if my personal line is 200? Well, why wouldn't I want to try to get to a point where I can pull the 201 pound?
Yep.
Like we should all be increasing that. I was just wanted to, hear your thought on that.
Oh man, I mean, man, there's so much I could say to that, man. And they're all good points. And first things first, I've spoke at March Mayhem in Idaho. Idaho's a beautiful place, man. I'm not trying to knock on Idaho, man.
Props to Idaho. We love you.
Beautiful place, man. And I met some really, phenomenal people out there. So hats off to Idaho. So, I mean, there's just so much to that. I mean, I think when we set a goal or a limit, we're really limiting ourselves.
Yes.
Okay. And once you get there, it's like, all right, I got it. So what's human nature going to be?
Take off the gas.
I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm good.
We hit the minimum.
So, I mean, they said for decades, nobody could ever run a 4-minute mile. That was just the impossible barrier. Okay. And then Roger Bannister did it. What's really interesting is within 2 to 3 years after he did it, 10 other people beat his record. So when we set these, the bar, it's like, don't set the bar.
Don't set it. Yes.
Don't set the bar. Just go out. If I bring the best version that I can possibly be to the fire ground, I can live with it.
Yeah.
Because the fire always gets a vote. And things may not, and I've had those nights before, man. To an extent, I've had a couple nights that haunt me to this very day that were a long, long time ago.
Sure.
But did I bring the best version of myself? And I would say to everybody, if you're settling, I'm okay, I'm okay.
Yeah.
What happens if? Because you're going to have to live with yourself the day after. What happens because you can, I think Chief Lieb says this, you can fool the spectators, but you can't fool the players. You can't. And you're a player in the game. So if you come up short, I just tell people, for your own peace of mind, just work to be the best version of yourself. That's it. That's all you got to do.
When you said don't set the bar, I want to clarify, there should be a minimum standard for coming in.
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
to come in, but like that's the minimum. Okay, now that we've hit the minimum of recruit level,
right,
everything should be beyond that.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be like, okay, we hit the bar, now we're cruise control. Because as soon as you cruise control, boop, if you hit the minimum,
right,
you're below the minimum.
Yeah. Well, I've earned my seat at the table.
Right.
And every day that I want to sit at the table, I have to earn my seat. Okay. That's that's the baseline. That's cash in. I got to cash in to the game, which means I got to be able to do whatever that minimum standard is. Now, once I'm in the game, now I control my own destiny. Like, how am I going to be better? How am I going to make that best version of myself? And I think that's the answer. And you know what? Come Sunday, man, that's cool, man. Have an egg McMuffin and a sleeve of cookies and take a nap in a recliner.
Yeah.
We need that. You can't be 24/7, 365. The human body requires you.
Yeah, we've got to reset. What's Chief Reilly's go-to cookie? Just for the record, because I bet you never said it.
Well, I'm...
are you an Oreo guy? Chips Ahoy?
They're all good. But Walmart has got the chocolate dipped Madeleines.
You see, you said a lot of things on a lot of podcasts. I guarantee I hit a first on that one.
You did, man. The chocolate dipped Madeleines from Walmart, man.
Guilty pleasure,
man. 5-star, man. 5-star. They're that good.
I would like to let you continue to rant on all the things you want to rant on, but I can't let you walk away from here without talking about your FDIC experience. Once again, I could let you go for hours, but I got to get the FDIC thing in. Your your journey through, applying. You can even, if you want to kind of encapsulate teaching in general, for
Sure.
talk about your company, talk
Sure.
about how you got into teaching, your path through, and then let's kind of culminate with your FDIC experience.
So I've always been involved in training.
Correct. Early
I've
on.
always been. I mean, going back, going back to New Jersey, man. I was hired as a training officer. My time in the military and my time working Blackwater Security has really underscored the importance of good, effective training. So, absolutely, I enjoy it. I like sharing my experiences. I like helping people improve. I like being able to say that I was able to contribute to the overall good. So, I mean, it's just a good thing. I mean,
Yeah.
I enjoy traveling. I enjoy seeing new people. I enjoy seeing new things because I go out there on the road and I see some stuff like, man, that's pretty sharp. And I never thought of that.
Yeah, correct. That was
So,
my experience
yeah.
with PFT.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, I don't think I'm dumb, but
Yeah.
like, I never
Yeah.
saw any of that stuff.
Yeah.
What was your foray, or when did you start dabbling in the travel teaching, and then eventually you started the company?
Yeah.
I know the company came a little bit later. You had
Yeah.
probably been traveling a little bit.
I've been traveling a little bit. Hey, once again, hats off to, Chief Isaacson and, the CFT folks. I mean, he really, made the big stage available to me. And I had a great experience. And I said, this is pretty cool. And it was really kind of funny because that one, the first time I ever spoke at CFT, it was the All Texas Day and me. Because it was Howard Reinwald, Kyle Romagus, Clyde Gordon, and me.
Was that in 20? Was your first experience in 2022?
I think it was.
But you also had the other Houston district chief, who's now he's still
and Mo Davis.
Mo, thank you.
Davis.
I was drawing a blank there.
Yeah, I
All
I
Texas
did too.
and you.
All the Texas guys and me.
Yeah.
And I went on at the very end of the day, and man, there were still a couple hundred people in the room listening to me.
Yeah.
And it was just kind of a neat experience. I always say it's not about me, it's about the students. But quite honestly, it was a very rewarding experience, and it made me say, well, maybe I do have a message that's can resonate with people. Maybe I should invest some time and energy, excuse me, in talking and speaking. So that really kind of opened the door. And
Wait, now let me stop you, Chief. Did
Sure.
you were teaching probably locally,
Yes.
and you were kind of, so CFT was kind of the first big stage,
Yeah.
but you were bouncing around
Yeah.
before that.
Yeah, local
Okay.
stuff, here and there. Like fire department next door calls me up, say, hey, listen, can you come over for a drill night? And yeah, sure, no problem. But really, the CFT experience is the one thing that really kind of said, like, yeah, okay. And I know we talked about this. Coralie Moore had me on the scrap. I was number 50 on the scrap.
Yeah, you
And-
shocked me because when
yeah.
we talked about Corley when we ate supper, you said, yeah, I went on
50.
a long time
Yeah.
ago. I was like, oh man, I'm pretty sure I watched it, but it was so long ago I'd
Yeah.
forgotten. But
I
anyway.
was still living in California, and that was like eons ago. So, so Coralie and I have had conversations, and it was always, and one of the, one of the recurring themes we have is, there's two type of people in this world. There's the talkers and the doers,
He does
and-
say that quite often.
There's the talkers and the doers. And I'd always say, well, maybe I need to start, maybe I need to, get out there. Maybe I do have the message that's going to resonate. Maybe I can add value. And it's like, I kind of should, maybe. And I finally woke up one morning. I said, hey, listen, bro, you make fun of the talkers all the time. You've been talking about starting your company for the last 2 years. What are you going to do? And I was at Revolutionary Fire Tactics in Lake of the Ozarks, and I went on Facebook Live on my own personal page before I even had the business page. I went on my own personal Facebook page, and I said, hey, this is it. The first line fire service training is up and running. And that's when I started it. And it's been, it's been a phenomenal ride ever since, man.
Man, you've been absolutely all over the place in the
I've
in the
done well.
last 2 or 3 years.
I've done well.
Okay, so you move through, you're bouncing all over the place. There's not a spot that you just about haven't hit yet. 20 plus states that you've rolled
Yeah.
through. But But then I remember talking to you. I remember talking to you at supper, and we were talking about FDIC.
Yep.
And I either said it or I thought it. I don't know if I said it out loud, but you said you had applied 6 previous times, and I said, once again, I might have thought it, but I was like,
Yeah.
I think this is. I think the year's next year.
Yep.
And then lo and behold, I'm not a prophet, but it felt.
Yeah.
I was like, oh shit, I was validated. You ended up landing it. So you get accepted, and then what? Last week? Yeah, last week. I'd like you to speak on that.
So one point that I make to everybody is if you've got a message that you want to share, man, apply. And you know what? You may have to apply 2, 3, 4, whatever. I applied 6 times, and then I finally got accepted. So don't read anything into it. It's a process. There's probably a little secret sauce that goes in it. I don't know. I'm not sitting in the room, but I know they get a ton of submissions. So if you have a message, spend some time working on your proposal. You can download the thing off the internet, and if you download it, you throw it together and just stick it in. It's going to go in the trash can because there's a lot of really, really sharp people who are reviewing those things. So you got to put some time and effort into the proposal. And I'm just trying to make a plug for Diane and, Chief Rhodes and everybody else that's part of that process. There's a lot of work that goes into it, and they screen the submissions looking for the best. And I mean, I got lucky, man. I got picked up. They gave me an opportunity, and I had a great time. I mean, it is just, if you've never been to that event, man, it's a 36,000, I think they had this year.
That's crazy.
It is huge.
That's crazy.
And I've been at big events before, and it's like, okay, I mean, this dwarfs anything I've ever been to.
Okay. I saw on Facebook, Ann had said, she said, I wanted to get Chief Reilly next to a sign.
Yeah.
Did you get next to a sign?
Yeah, I got
okay,
to.
I didn't see it posted.
It's the obligatory picture. Everybody that teaches out there, gets so.
You have to.
So there was a bunch of Florida guys down there, and Scott, who does a lot of my social media stuff, he was there.
Okay.
And I noticed he was, with his wife and kid.
Mm-hmm.
And they say you can take the sign. It's like, well, I want a sign, but it's big, I mean, it's not going to fit in the overheads. I mean, if I fold it up. So I asked him, I said, hey, Scott, did you drive here? And he goes, yeah, I drove here. So I gave him my sign, and he's going to bring it to me at COBC.
Very
so I got
cool.
the sign, I got the picture, but it was just an awesome experience. I spoke at 8:30 on Friday, okay, which is the first session early in the morning of the last day. So I'm saying to myself, okay, this is a typical conference thing. I'm going to go in there. There's going to be 5 people in the room. 2 of them are going to be asleep. One guy's going to be hungover, and there's going to be 2 other people messing with their phone.
Right.
And look, that's okay. I mean, I'm not, I'm just, kind of being a little bit, like Dennis does.
Yeah.
But I walk in the room, man.
Setting the bar low. Make sure you expect. Yeah.
Man, there was 60 people that came in Friday morning at 8:30 to listen to what I had to say.
That's got to feel good, huh?
It was a good experience. Had a lot of good feedback, and once again, I think that I was able to share some stuff, about the human mindset. I talked a lot about using data from Firefighter Rescue Survey, Project Mayday, UL studies. How do we, as incident commanders, take that data and use it to make good decisions on the fire ground? And that's what I talked about. How do we develop up and coming incident commanders? What are some of the things that I wish people had told me the day before I got promoted? Not that I had to figure out, like 2 years into this, it's like, oh, wow, nobody told me about this one.
Man, that's like, so far as I continue down this process from February of 2022 through CFT, that's a reoccurring thing. Why didn't I know this before? That it just, for everything, whether it's ladder angles for rescue, whether it's a proper VES or a tripod method or a split search. When Eric Wheaton split and he went into 2 different rooms, and all I'd ever learned was the centipede for the first 14 years of my career, I wanted him arrested. I was like, you can't do that.
Yeah.
And you just keep going down these rabbit holes of what's even possible. And that's what I keep coming. Why did I know about? Why didn't I know about the Firefighter Rescue Survey previously? Sure. They bring such good data. They track our rescues, and we can take that and apply it back. And it's why did I know about all the time?
So go back to answering the why. Okay. Why does Eric Wheaton say you can split? Because it's a 10 by 12 bedroom with a window in it. And half of the room is occupied by furniture.
Yeah, correct.
It's like,
there's 3 by
oh.
3 foot, 2 by 2 foot of
Yeah.
floor space. There's
Yeah.
nothing in there. Why are
Yeah.
we crawling around grabbing a wall? There's
Yeah.
no wall to grab onto.
it's like,
Yeah.
oh,
Wait,
Okay.
that makes sense.
yeah, okay, yeah. And I think, and that's why, that's why I'm pretty passionate about what I do and I travel and whatever. And I say this in every class. I'm not going to tell you anything that Dennis dreamed up. I'm not.
It's true.
I'm going to share the stuff that generations of firefighters have shared with me.
Yes.
Okay? And I'm just sharing, you can take it and run with it. I mean, and you know what? It may not fit. And if it doesn't fit, it don't fit. Maybe it doesn't fit quite the way that I did it, but you can make it fit for your community. That's why I do what I do. I mean, it's nothing more than that.
Yeah. So let's see. We can go a lot of different places. I do want to touch on. I've seen you on social media that I don't know if I want to call you out or not. Me and you.
Sure.
Me and you, as with many other firemen, have a fascination with Basil Ibrahim as an absolute stud.
Yeah.
And I've seen you got to go to One Bad Tour a couple of times, and you got to experience that. And this is just me asking you, how was that?
Oh,
Like,
it was great.
Yeah.
It was real. It was a really awesome experience. He invited me to come. So I've been to 2 of them.
Yeah.
It's a really good experience. It's a real kick in the teeth. They don't give anything away. There's expectations, and you got to meet the standards. And if you don't, thanks for coming out. But if you want to put yourself in these stressful situations, if you really want to see what you're capable of doing, it's like, man, absolutely. And there are guys. I mean, there are like top shelf guys who go to that, and they,
They end up not quite. They don't hit the standard.
And you know what? And there's top shelf guys who go to that thing and they get kicked in the teeth for 24 hours and they just gut it out. Yeah. And they come out the other side. I mean, Marcus has been to that from Hard Knocks.
Yeah.
He's been there.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, Eric Wheaton's company went to like the first one.
Oof.
First 1 or 2. If I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure I'm right about that.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of Chris Snow, I think's been. I mean,
yeah, there's tons. There's tons of solid dudes that roll through it. You stay up?
Huh?
You stay up for the 24 hours with him?
Yeah. Well, we get like an hour and a half.
Yeah.
At like 3:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
We get it like an hour and a half.
Sneak in a little.
Oh yeah, man. I go to my truck, man. I put my sleeping bag in the back of my pickup truck, man. I get my hour.
Yeah.
I get my hour. Well, they have an hour and a half downtime. You use the time however you want.
Sure.
I mean, I know what's coming.
Oh, sure. Yes, obviously.
So it's like, man, you can sit around the burn barrel and tell stories all you want, man. I know what's coming, man. I get an hour and 15 minutes of sleep. I set my alarm. I get up. I hydrate a little bit. I go to the burn barrel, hang out for 5 minutes, and we're back at it.
He said, I remember him talking on a podcast when he was developing it. He said, obviously he has to go through his own program.
Yep.
And he said when they first did it, they were like, this is way too hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. When those guys that develop it say that they went too hard.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, they scaled back a little bit.
Oh,
they scaled back.
I'd hate to see the first iteration of whatever they developed, but
it's a great program, man. And I think the other thing about that program is if you're going to be successful, you just got to be really humble.
Yeah.
Okay? Because rank don't matter, nothing matters. It's do or leave. That's all there is to it.
Sure.
But and so many people are afraid to get into that experience. Well, you don't think the fireground's a humbling experience? You don't think that what your community expects you to do every day you report to the fire station is 50 times more humbling than what's going to happen in Leesburg.
Correct. Yeah, it's a safe environment over there. It's going to suck. but it's going to be safe. What you might actually have to do is going to suck more. Potentially have to do is going to suck more.
We have, I think like the last one I went to, I mean, we had like a 3-to-1, 4-to-1 instructor to student ratio. It was crazy how many instructors, and mentors and coaches we had down there. So, I mean, no one's going to fall through the net. I mean, we know what we're doing.
Yeah.
We know what to look for. We know where the red flags are. We've got plenty of supervision. They've been doing these evolutions in Leesburg. I think the last one was 8. So I think the last one was 8.
I think it's 8. I think they're coming up on 9. I could be wrong.
So they've done 6 in Leesburg, and they've done either 6 or 7 in Leesburg. They've done 1 or 2 down south.
Yeah.
But it's the same facility. So, I mean, I know,
Yeah.
I mean, I've been down there, 2-3 times. I mean, I know the facility like the back of my hand. I know where the fire sets are. I know what to watch out for. I know where, I know where people are going to make the wrong turn. So
Sure.
you can say, back this way.
Let me ask you, Chief, that in this, don't dive too deep into it if you don't
Yeah,
want
no,
to, but he brings you in just to assist. Like he brings you in just to be part of the part of the group and kind of move stuff around. That's cool. That's
I
a
just
cool
kind of
thing.
hang out.
Yeah, hanging out with the dudes.
I just
like
kind of
that.
hang out with the guys.
Yeah,
But I think there's value in having a 67-year-old chief down there, running around in turnout gear at 3:00 in the morning.
yeah.
Yeah,
No, I
that's right.
agree. I look. I'd like to see you down there.
Yeah.
I put in the last 2 times. I didn't make it.
Yeah,
but I'm just gonna
it'll
keep putting in.
Just keep putting in, it'll come.
I got one of the guys in the little cadre that I have went through the Mississippi Smoke Diver program, and Josh Borkin, when he came back, he wanted me to go through Mississippi, and I was like, I'm not there. And he goes, well, let's go to attempt one bad tour. And I'm a sucker.
Yeah.
If you called me and like, hey Chris, you gonna be down? You want to go do like a half marathon? I would have no plans on running it, but I'd go run it with you because if you say let's do it, I'm I don't want to say easy to manipulate, but like challenges like that.
Yeah.
Then, so he said, let's do it. So we put in, and now we're both kind of committed. We're both to the point where it's like, we're just going to keep putting in until we go get abused. And so we're looking forward to it.
It'll come.
At some point. It'll come. All right, Chief, we've been at it about an hour and 15. Do you want to keep rolling through stuff? Or you want to kind of tie it up?
No,
You could talk
what else?
forever now.
Yeah, what else do we want to cover? I mean, we've been down a lot of roads, man.
Yeah.
We talked about training, we talked about expectations, talked about performance and fitness.
Performance, training, excellence.
Yeah.
Let's tie it up.
Yeah.
Because I know we could go all night.
Sure.
Let's wrap it up with my final 2 questions, and then we'll hit your final thoughts, and then
Sure.
we'll put a bow on it.
Sure.
The 2 questions I always ask are, I think that mentorship is important, in my opinion. I didn't have mentors coming through the fire service, and what a mentor to me, I always try to give this caveat. I think mentor gets overused a little bit too much in the fire service now. Everybody's a mentor. Everybody, and for me, it means more. It's that person that I use this term all the time. The person that has a vested interest in your success of getting through the job and doing it correctly. Going to tell you if you suck, they're going to tell you suck, but they're also going to tell you good. That's the person I'm looking for. And I'm wondering if you had one or a couple that were really impactful in moving you through your career.
So I can answer that, in 2 different stages of my career. Back as a new officer and a new chief in Cherry Hill and where I am now. And if I go back to the Cherry Hill days, man, I just got to say Bob Giorgio, he was the chief of the Cherry Hill Fire Department. And, man, I'll tell you, he and I went down the road a long, long time. And, at some, we butted heads a little bit. And we got to the point where we became very close. He entrusted me with a lot of difficult assignments, and he just gave me the backup that I needed. And man, I'll tell you, it's just he did so much without having to do a ton. And I mean, I just can't, I just can't overlook.
He was that guy in your corner.
Yeah.
That guy in your corner.
Yeah.
The guy kind of going through some fight with you.
Yeah,
That kind of deal.
And me and him, I mean, man, we butted heads some. I mean, we really did, man. I had a real strong personality, and when I first got promoted to chief, I thought I knew everything, and I really didn't. and he's the guy that kind of pulled the chain a little bit. And it's like, okay, maybe I do need to. And we got to the point where when I got ready to retire, I mean, we were just, we were colleagues, we were good friends, and we were very focused on the mission and creating a great fire department. And I think that we were able to do that. So that's Bob. That's in that stage of my career.
I want to stop you just right there to say I'm glad that y'all butt heads like that, because I think it's important because you don't want to be surrounded by a bunch of yes men. You don't want to have your mentor should not be praising you all the time for everything you're doing.
No. Bob called me out on a couple things, and he was right. So it's like, and now, I mean, I'm in a circle, man. The list is
it's large.
I would say that if I tried to name names, I'd leave people out.
Okay, well,
that I don't want to leave out.
Then don't.
But I'm moving that circle where all those guys are just so good to me, so supportive.
Sure.
I just can't. The way the trajectory that I'm on now is because of the strength and the love those guys have given me. So
excellent.
And I think they know who they are.
Oh, they know. That's like Corley Moore asking, like, well, who should be the next person on the scrap? It's like, you're going to, I say one name and I'm leaving out 50. I don't even want to name the one
Who's
name.
the 5 on the fire department Mount Rushmore? I got 50 that belong up there. There is a guy, and if he hears this, the day after FDIC, I'm out at dinner with my wife, and he sends me a text message. Hey, man, did you get home okay, man? How did your class go? He is a very well-known fire service professional.
Well, he'll know who he is as soon as
assuming
he hears it. Yeah.
I mean, I looked at that man and I smiled for the next hour just because he took the time to reach out to me and ask me how my class went. It's like, wow.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah. Okay, so from there, it's going to be so look, I access to everybody. If you've got 7 years in the fire service or 13, but for you, it's pretty important because you got a lot more history than a lot of the guys that come through. So you are looking at a recruit, Dennis Reilly, who's going through, and you're going to look back at him and you're going to say, hey man, let me tell you this piece of advice, and you hope that it makes his career better and improves it. What do you got for him?
I got 2 things for him. Number 1, 2 eyes, 2 ears, and 1 mouth. Okay? Because if you focus on your eyes and your ears and you minimize your mouth like I didn't do,
understandable,
people are going to be willing to invest in you. And you're going to work with some phenomenal people that are going to teach you the ways and the art of what we're doing. And you can't put a price tag on that. And number 2, don't be in too much of a hurry, because every time I promoted, I think I promoted too early. I wish I would have spent a little more time in the upper ranks before I moved up. Yeah. From firefighter to company officer, and from company officer to battalion chief.
Yeah.
In a little too much of a rush.
Yeah, I did the exact same thing. Exact same thing. Every single promotion I took was too quick.
Yep.
So I completely agree with you. All right. You have the floor for final thoughts, and then we'll wrap it.
Well, I'm just so thankful for the opportunity to sit down and chat with you. I appreciate people that are going to take time out of their day to listen to me. I hope that I've added, some value to you. And, look, you got the best job on the face of the earth. Respect it. Love it for what it is. And you know what? If it's not the best job, then go find the best job. How about that? We don't owe you anything. The fire service doesn't owe you a single thing, and you have to earn your seat at the table every day. But once you earn your seat for that day can be phenomenal. So just enjoy it, man.
Absolutely. Chief Reilly, if somebody wants to reach out to you, contact you, maybe take a class, maybe have you fly out, maybe they want to do what I did and send you over something to say, Chief, can you put your eyes on this for me? What's the best way to reach you?
And I will do anything in the world, that I can help anybody. Facebook, First Line Fire Service Training, LLC. Instagram, First Line 850. And my email is dennis.firstline@gmail.
Super, super, super simple.
Yep.
Chief, I'm going to be completely honest with you. Super humbled that you came on. If you would have asked me a year ago that this scenario would be taking place, I'd say that's insane. There's no way that's going to happen. So I appreciate you driving out, leaving your home to come over here and have a conversation with us. And I appreciate you.
It's my pleasure. And hey, look, man, I'm just a guy trying to, navigate his way through life, man. I say this, the reason why I made chief is all the smart guys didn't show up on test day. They said, give it to the tall guy with the mustache and see what he does. And luckily, I worked in some great organizations with great people that put me in a good position. So thank you very much.
All right. That wraps the next episode of the Dragons Den podcast. Thank you guys for tuning in. Like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. So once again, Chief, thank you. And let's go eat, huh?
You bet.